a lot of them accused of treason, and the watermen slid the name to Traitors' Gate. We have had some fairly famous traitors here. You might well have heard of Queen Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife, and Queen Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's fifth wife. Disturbing pattern emerging there. Now, I'm going to talk more about those two floozies later when I show you where they were killed and where they lie to this day. Thomas More. Now, Thomas More was the Lord Chancellor. He was the Lord Chancellor, a very powerful man in England. The Lord Chancellor's office is known as the King's Conscience. It was his job to tell the King or Queen if he was acting against the public interest. And when Henry VIII declared he was going to be head of the church in England, as well as head of state, Thomas More did his job. He advised him. Don't do that, he said. Too much power in one man can only lead to tyranny. Now, not to prove the point or anything, Henry VIII had him in prison just for saying that. He was held in the bell tower over there. Work began on that in 1190. It's nearly finished. I must apologise for the scaffolding around, but in winter we're usually not that busy. And this is when we do all our maintenance. All right? And usually you don't get queues, but you seem to have come in your numbers today. And I think you've got the worst of both worlds. But anyway, there we go. Thomas More was a prisoner in the bell tower for 15 months. And he suffered terribly. But in July of 1535, Henry VIII ordered his execution. He was taken out to Tower Hill, and thousands gathered to hear his last words. These were simple yet profound. I die the king's true servant, he said. I shall always be God's servant first. Yeah. God's servant, eh? He burned people just for reading a Bible in English. He knelt down, rested his neck on a block of oak. The executioner removed his head with one stroke of an axe. The axe was impaled on a soldier's pike, paraded through the streets of London, and was left on London Bridge as a warning to other traitors. It would also have served as an early form of bird feeder. So it was environmentally friendly. However, his sister had the head stolen, and it was taken to their home in Chelsea, which is now a Jesuit college. Many Jesuits believe the head is still on the ground. But there is a church in Canterbury called St Dunstan's, and they claim they've got the head. I'm not an expert on Thomas More, but I'm fairly certain he only had one head. I don't know where that is. But I do know his headless corpse was brought back inside the fortress for burial in the chapel, where we're going to end part 2. Now, on a happier note, behind you we have the Bloody Tower. Again, this is not its original name. Originally, this was known as the Garden Tower, but we changed it for marketing purposes. In 1483, this was home to the King of England. You might wonder why a king would choose to live in what is clearly a gatehouse. He was Edward V. He was 12 years old. He might not have had a choice. His younger brother, Richard, the Duke of York, was just 9. They lived up there with the soldiers under the protection of their Uncle Richard, the Duke of Gloucester. They needed his protection. There was a war on. These boys were targets, and people were trying to kill them. Gloucester knew that. He took his protection duties so seriously, he had Parliament declare his nephews to be bastards. They couldn't keep the crown, and he took it. He became King Richard III. He was now the target, and his nephews continued to play safely in the ground long after his coronation. That is all documented fact. But it is also a fact that these boys disappeared. There were rumours at the time that they were spirited away to Ireland for their own protection. But Shakespeare tells us that one night in 1483, they fell asleep up there and never woke up. That during the night, they were smothered to death with their own pillows, stabbed with a dagger for good measure. Now, I'd like you children, especially you young children, to think about that at bedtime. Your mums and dads are going to tell you it was a long time ago, and that's true. They may also tell you that there are no more bad men. That's a lie. There are always bad men, children, and sometimes they're under your bed or in your wardrobe. And that's when they'll get you. Sweet dreams, kids. Yeah. Their disappearance was a mystery for nearly 200 years. I am available for child minding. Their disappearance was a mystery for nearly 200 years. In 1674, workmen on the south side of the White Tower removed the stone stairway and discovered the remains of 2 small people. The experts at the time declared these to be the bones of the princes, and Charles II commanded they should be laid to rest in Westminster Abbey, in Innocents' Corner, that he had named in their honour. Who killed them? I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. What bothers me is that nearly everybody, and without a shred of evidence, blamed Richard III. Oh, they quote Shakespeare. But for your information, or FYI, if you're under the age of 20, Shakespeare was not a playwright. He wasn't a detective. He was a playwright. And he was writing to amuse Elizabeth I. She was a Tudor. Her grandfather, Henry Tudor, defeated Richard at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. Took the crown from Richard's dead head. He had no real claim to the throne, but he declared himself king. And he could not have done that if these lads had been alive. At the time, nobody even thought they were dead, but maybe he did. It is entirely possible that Henry Tudor had those boys murdered, but Shakespeare could not write that. Not if he wanted to keep his head. This is an important lesson. It is the only lesson you shall take away from here today, children. History is not the past. History is never what it was, it is always what it is. History is a story of the past, and it is writ large and expanded by the people who win. Now this explains why French history books are quite thick, while volumes of British history cover shelves all over the world. History is also a dynamic. It does not stay in the past. It has this habit of bubbling up hundreds of years later. Only last year, I was telling people that Richard III was chopped up on the battlefield of Bosworth and thrown into the River Soar. But I was wrong. In September of 2012, Richard III was discovered. He'd spent most of the last 700 years under the Social Services car park in Leicester. He was positively identified with DNA from a known descendant. Those DNA markers will be present on those bones in Westminster Abbey if, and only if, they are his nephews. But that was 3 years ago. We haven't checked. And the interesting thing is, we're not going to. Because if it's not them, we've got a problem. Who they are becomes irrelevant. Where the princes are becomes all important. And if it is true that they were spirited away to Ireland, the land of my fathers, well, it is entirely possible that I, William Callaghan, of the Fighting Callaghans of Cork, could now be the true king of England. No one wants that. No, you really don't want that. But you get the idea. Every nutter and his cat are going to be claiming the throne. All right? So best let sleeping dogs lie. They sometimes say the ghost of those children can be seen in the windows there. Anyway, okay. Right, what we do know about the Bloody Tower is that it is a mob of medieval defensive architecture. There you see it is a 2.5-ton oak and steel portcullis. That's 700 years old and in perfect working order. Beyond it, those gates weigh a further 3 ton. 5.5 tons of oak and steel that you're going to have to hack through with your poxy little swords and axes. That's going to take time. Time is a luxury you never have in battle. The defenders on the ramparts and fighting tops would now be hurling vicious verbal abuse at you. Not to mention stones, arrows, buckets of boiling waste, cows, sheep, salad, unwanted children. Everything would be thrown at you. It is not a healthy place to stand, but it is one of my favourites. This is the springboard to the inner ward. We are about to charge through. Charge is a military term. It means to move rapidly, to engage in eager combat with the enemy. So let's not have the Italians at the front. Charge! Anyone not yet been offended, let me know! Come on, kids!